Hello everybody, welcome to Alternative Interactions. I'm Gary. Please like, share and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow and I really do appreciate it, so thank you. Today we're going to look at airships. Something I think is far older than we're actually told. Far older. I think airships were predominantly a way of travelling for hundreds and hundreds of years, and I think we can see some of this evidence around. So without further ado, I'll get on with my slideshow and we'll have a little chat about it. Okay everyone, so we're going to be talking about airships, but we're not only going to be talking about airships, we're also going to be talking about the hangars and the docking systems. So this photograph is a very good example of. We have a docking system here. We have a hangar here. And you can just see the size of these things. Absolutely massive. They really were a way to travel back in the day. Very much so. Now, it's initially a hangar that I want you to think about. Because where do we see buildings with very wide entrances used today for transportation modes? Well, we see it in train stations. Stations or train stations have very big entrances for trains to come out of and small entrances for us to go into. But why would all the train stations, all the old train stations, have such large entrances? Huge vaulted rooms inside with transportation available below. Seems very strange that we have this kind of effect, doesn't it? After all, the train only needs a small exit, not such a big one. You could have caught the train to then catch the airship to travel wherever you wanted to. Because railways are far older than we think as well. They really are far older. So here we have an airship on a lake with a great big, what would be a shipyard. An airship for a shipyard. And we'll see more of this in coming up. But again, today we would make ships or boats inside these. But what if they weren't originally for ships and boats, or they had a dual purpose? A dual purpose for airships. I mean, this is 1908. And here we have another airship inside its hangar. But I don't think these hangars were used very often. I don't think there was many of them around because they weren't needed. And we will get into that as well. It's very interesting. Now obviously airships come in different sizes, from the absolutely massive to the smaller, and I think there would have been a multitude of sizes for individually owned ones to company transport ones, just as we have today with aircraft. So we also have the ability with these airships to store them upright, and we see these towers a lot. But these towers don't necessarily look like this anymore, because many of them were covered up, or many of them were at the top of buildings. But it's very interesting, with a few towers like this, you would have the ability to store these balloons and or recharge them. Now here we have a balloon in flight, been taken from either another aircraft or another balloon. I should imagine it's an aircraft because we have only one shadow effect here and not another one. But it's beautiful. What a way to travel around. And they were definitely used by the forces, the armies, the navy, as a means of moving people, goods and equipment around. Here we've got the biplane with the balloon. Now many of these balloons actually had biplanes within them, so you could take off and land if you needed to get somebody down or get something back up in a hurry, or as a means of protection for them from the balloon against attack. But these buildings here with their pointed roofs are very interesting. The modern ones have flattish roofs, but older ones have towers. I wonder why. So here we can see the balloon where you'd be able to fly along, and you would attach and hook up onto this, and then this would be drawn up and the aircraft would go. You can see the wing shape. You'd turn off the engine and it could be taken up inside into the base of the fuselage of the hot air balloon. So fascinating things, really are interesting, because these definitely predate these. Again, beautiful shots of the hot air balloons flying around over major cities and metropolises. But again, the older buildings have very, very strange pointy bits at the top. This one here particularly. Modern buildings don't, but the oldest ones do. The Tartarian ones do. Now we know some of the Tartarian cathedrals date back from the 1000 AD, the 11th century. Now I'm not saying these balloons are that old at all, but we know many of the power grid systems were being developed around that period and beyond with the Tartarian infrastructure. And we know that the Tartarian buildings are far, far older than we suspect they are. At least 500, 600, 700, 800 years old, some of them potentially. And we have, and I have shown, demonstrated the use of electricity in the 15 and 1600s via nights in my previous shows. And we know from also my previous shows that with the Vimuna flying machines of around 3000 BC, that they were using these things as pre-flight checks and even how to dogfight these flying craft. So a balloon like this, an airship, is not that advanced compared to what was once. Now this is the insides, and as you can see there's people playing cards, reading, and a lovely viewing gallery. It looks very, very civilized. As you can see, the viewing gallery. So as you're flying along, you'd be able to look out the window and observe what was below. These things were flying hotels. This is the inside of an airship, believe it or not. And here we have the silver service dinner and cutlery all ready to be served up. And here we are inside an airship hotel. Fine dining. Absolutely fascinating. And this is an airship control system, very basic really, and we have the ship wheel. Fascinating, isn't it? Absolutely amazing. They don't seem overly complex. Now I've put these in, and although these aren't a good example as such, we get these megaliths, or these pillars everywhere. All over the world, in fact. But what else? The other thing we get all over the world is these. And these had several purposes. One was free energy capture, for sure. But the other thing is, they all have doors. So why would a building like this need a door? Here we go, there's a door here. They all have doors. They also all have, at the top, a viewing platform. It's very strange, isn't it? Until you look inside. An airship tower and machinery housing. And these are the towers that we just showed previously. You would go in through the door, and there's a winding staircase that goes up to the top part of the tower. all designed in a very similar way. These ones just happen to have a metal frame on the outside. This one is a brick or stone construction leading to the top. And here we have the viewing gallery, as I'm calling it, but it's actually not. And here we have another area where we can stand, people can gather. We have this very strange mechanism at the top. We see that mechanism at the top on many buildings as well. This kind of building or tower with our little area, but what we can see is it's actually a passenger platform, and the airship would have collected on to this here, probably got a bit of a free charge, and people would have come off this tower and walked up into the airship from these towers. These towers may look beautiful, but they were designed for something else, and a lot of these towers had the top part removed and a statue of somebody stuck in its place, so that the official narrative of what they really are could be changed. Nelson's column and all these would have been, in the UK, would have been hot air balloon landing sites to depart and board the airship. Here we can see another one. We can see the attachment area and the people walking on to the airship. I do hope you can't hear that in the background. There's some child screaming its head off, so I do apologise. But yeah, we can see that they've gone up this tower and they're now boarding on to the airship. But these types of towers were not only at ground level or just above ground level, they were also at the top of buildings. Remember I shown you the buildings with the pointy tops? Well, there you go. People would have gone up inside this tower onto the viewing deck or boarding deck and gone into the airships that way. Here's a tower. They've just gone on and the airships either departing or getting ready to land. How many buildings, old buildings, have this kind of design on the top? Many of them are older than we say they are as well. And not all of them have to be this tall, obviously, but this is a relatively modern-ish building, so we're told, but you can clearly see they have built on top of it a balloon transportation system. This one just happens to be on the ground, but this kind of system could have been put on any building or placed anywhere for these balloons to hitch up to so people could get in and out. You'd go up the tower. There's a small area here, probably seating around it, and then you get up and you go up to the next part and then you'd enter the balloon. This was the transportation of the time, and I think hundreds of years this sort of transportation was used. Now we also have lighthouses, and lighthouses are a very similar thing. Always have a connection at the top, stairways going up, and an area. And here we have a lighthouse mechanism with the steps, with the people exiting and entering into the balloon, the airship. We also have it on ships itself, or themselves. So lighthouses were not only to warn ships of potential danger, lighthouses were also docking stations for airships. Everything in the olden days had multiple uses, unlike today. And here we have a ship, and the back part is a docking station for the airship. Either giving supplies or receiving supplies, or just catching a ride home. Same similar sort of tower system on the ship, with a huge airship coming off it. And another example, and as you can see, it's the USS Los Angeles moored to USS Patoka. An airship moored to a ship. I also want to talk about the Hindenburg. Now the Hindenburgs, obviously, if anyone of you was taught anything about history, it was the Hindenburg disaster, where apparently it crashed, caught fire, and everybody died. However, with the Mandela effects, the amount of people died changes to 30, and loads escaped, and some didn't escape. I mean, these airships would have held a lot of people. A lot of people would have got on and off these airships. And again, it's in the big container area, probably connected to a railway system. So you got off the railway, came in here, got onto your airship, and off it went. And then you would have cruised around the realm. You know, you wouldn't have to have stopped until you run out of water and food. But the Hindenburg was something that we would call a false flag. Now, the event happened for sure, but there's the reason behind the event happening, which is why we give it the name of the false flag. Because after the Hindenburg disaster, airships were not used anymore and were phased out immediately, and they then went on to aircraft. Very interesting. Do you really believe one of these machines would have been filled with a gas that could explode or cause fire? Because I can't be certain, I'm not going to say what they were filled with, helium or anything else. But it's very interesting that the powers that be wanted to stop the use of airships, and so there was a disaster, a loss of life, and airships were no longer used and were phased out completely, very quickly. And there we go. Hello. So hopefully you found that interesting. Airships were definitely a mode of transport that we used for a very, very long time. They would have been relatively easy to build. Now, we have lighthouses that were built in the 1600s, 1700s. We certainly have churches and cathedrals that were built, and today they would struggle to build such beautiful buildings. And these buildings have ironwork within them to create an ethereal grid, a power system, as they were all part of the power system. And it makes sense that these people, being so advanced, would have travelled around at such times. And why would you need to build roadways when you could sail in ships or use ships on the water as well as ships in the air? So when they say they travelled by ship, are they talking about an airship, or are they talking about a boat ship? Who knows? But it's very interesting. And I just thought I'd share that with you, just so you can see that airships really were the queens of the sky at one period and were used hugely. They were a major form of transportation for the masses, and so it's interesting that that was stopped, and then we had to go into aircraft, because the development of aircraft was obviously more profitable, I should imagine, and more beneficial to the controllers. And it always goes down to that same thing, doesn't it? Always. I'm so pleased we have a huge change coming, and we really do have a big change coming. So with that, I shall leave that and let you think about what I've just shown you. So thank you very much for watching. Please like, share and subscribe. And with that, I'll say goodbye. Blessings everybody. Bye bye. Thank you for watching.